Now, between this and the next Jimmy Stamp exercise, I will start to put in some scales. A little combination. All of it from Herbert L. Clark. But I ran across a warm-up sheet of his that a friend of mine had in which he talks about the trumpet. And the exercise that he used first thing in the morning. He said, I call this sandpapering my lips. Decided to combine that with his first set of characteristic studies. It doesn't sound very good. The quality of the sound is not too good, but that's not what I'm trying to do. Here what I'm trying to do is to get those lips sandpapered the way Herbert L. Clark put it, and to bang the valves down to begin to get some coordination with my fingering right off. And obviously I didn't have it at that point. So what I would play slower and slower and slower till I began to get some results. I'm keeping time by banging the valves down in rhythm and really banging them good. That way you get out of the habit of going hoo, 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 hoo. You don't want to help your note so long like that. You're putting a steady stream of air and you're changing the position of the note by simply pressing the valves down. Don't help out. Okay, I go through a set of chromatics like that, all low. I never get higher than the low C. Before I go into the next thing, which is the second set of Jimmy Stamps, the second page. Now I play these a little softer than he indicates. If it feels good, I begin to increase the volume and come back and forth on it, and you begin to feel your lip really coming alive. Speaking of these Jimmy Stamp exercises, I don't know why they work. He doesn't say in his book why these things are working. He does not tell you that. He just says, here, play this. This is what you do. And as I play them sometimes, my lips start to come around, and I say, I don't know what he thought of in this particular sequence of notes, but it does seem to set your embouchure in position some kind of way. They're really worthwhile, I think. They go on down till you get to this point. goes ska a couple more anyway. So I finished that. It's page 2, Jimmy Stamp. Now I'll go back and pick up Herbell Clark number 2. I'll throw in a few extra notes before I play each one because I'm looking to get that extreme buzz. Almost to the point where it's not an acceptable sound playing in an ensemble or a solo, but it's part of the warm-up. And I'm looking, am I getting my lips enough support here so that I can get tremendous vibration here? That's all I'm looking for. I'll modulate the quality of the sound as I go along later on. Starts on A flat and the one that starts on B flat they're easy. I do the ones that are hard, especially like the one in B. So now I'm going to go back a little slower. I may have to wind up playing this in quarter notes. I could do what I have to do to make these things sound right, to play them, get results quicker. But that to me is not engaging all of my systems. That way I'm forcing it. And I want to do as little forcing as possible because I want to play this baby as long as I can. And when you start to force an issue where you, instead of coaxing it, I think that you can overtax your lip or your facilities. That's my feeling. If you ever lose your lip once, you'll know what I'm talking about. Then I do the next one, the starting on the C, which incidentally is a very difficult one. They can't even believe that they call doing an interview, maybe getting ready to go to a concert to publicize it, and they say, well, what are you going to do now? What's your routine? Well, I'm going to go practice. I said, practice? You practice? If they could hear this, they'll know, yes. I mean, this is before the practice. And that's about what Maurice Andre said. He says, I use butter. He said I will rub that on my lip at night. I massage it in because I like the vitamin E in there. I got some other stuff I use. I get up in the morning. I do physical exercises before I start to play the trumpet. It takes me a good hour to warm up. Now I'm ready to start working on the material that I'm going to be presenting to the public and worrying more about how I'm actually sounding to other people. At this point in my warm-up now, I'm ready to start making a little bit louder sounds, beginning to work into more tone, throw a little vibrato in where it's proper. Begin to pull all of the elements in here. I'm not really warmed up enough to go on to the next thing because I played very hard yesterday between the rehearsal and the traveling and the concert last night. If I had a flugelhorn, I would be off someplace in a corner by myself playing pedal tones on a flugelhorn. But preparatory to going on to the next thing, just let me play the last one of the second Jimmy Stamps here. I'm warmed up enough to do it. Actually, I'm not. So at this point, I would do some more pedals. Whatever you got to do to get that lip buzzing. Now comes this next set of Jimmy Stamps that I like. If I'm ready to play. I like to know that I can walk down there and hit that F sharp anytime I want. That's a pretty lousy approach to that note. It's coming along, it's getting better, but usually, because with the talking and all and lack of concentration, I'm concentrating on what I'm saying to you rather than being within myself here. Usually, much sooner than this in a warm-up, there's at some point there where all of a sudden I don't think about where the mouthpiece is going to go. I don't have to think about anything. I put it up. It happens the same every time. The lip really starts to buzz. And at that point, no matter where I am in warm-up, I'm really ready to go on. However, I always, if possible, finish off my warm-ups. If you can't have enough time to warm up, don't press too hard. Do as much buzzing of the lips and with the mouthpiece as possible. Warm up very softly and work your way into it. Let somebody else carry the load till you get your chops going. Because if you start playing too hard too soon, you just stiffen this up, you bruise it, you abuse it, and you louse up a whole day of playing, and probably take you 2 or 3 days after that to get your lip back where it belongs. That's been my experience. So I just simply, if I walk in and my playing is late, I just tell them, I said, well, I'm not going to be out there to rehearse till I've warmed up for at least an hour. And that's it. And so they have to wait. because I don't know what else to do. Honestly, but like I say, if Jake Jacoby can show me how to do without a warm-up, Val Lowry can, or anybody else here, I'm open for it. But the important thing, in addition to all of this, if you're going to warm up, at some point in your warm-up, do what you can to make it as musical as possible. On those long tones, begin to put the vibrato in. At all times, look for the resonance in the sound, the projection. Begin to think of things like taking a soft note and hanging it up against that wall, just with the nice, steady air column, just keeping that note pressed right up against that back wall without playing loudly. Now I'd be about ready to, if I were warmed up, but at this point I would be if I hadn't done all this talking. If I were off concentrating by myself, I would be warmed up. And at that point, I go have lunch, probably. And then I come back and I have to warm up all over again. That's another thing. Warming up once in the morning doesn't do it for the whole day. If you have 3 or 4 hours or even an hour off for lunch, the way it works with me, if I play hard and I have to stop to get something to eat, when I come back, I do a shortened version of a warm-up. I don't just say, I warmed up this morning, I'm ready to go. I do a little warming up again. I need to. I have to do it, and that's the way it is for me. But like I said, you'll find a guy over here who says, well, I can do it in 5 minutes or 10 seconds or whatever. You're going to find another guy, well, I warm up for 2 hours. Alan Pizzuti says, I don't like to play lip slurs too much. Another guy who is an equally good trumpet player says, well, I like to use mostly lip slurs. That seems to be the way it is with trumpet. Find yourself a good teacher and work hard and be sincere, and that's where you're going to get results. There are no shortcuts on the trumpet. And above all, I think we should try to have as much fun playing it. And these are all the mechanical things. I was fortunate when I was a youngster growing up. We had no teachers available. I mean, you know, there was just nothing there. We were out in the middle of nowhere. You think this is the middle of nowhere. I mean, this looks like a teeming metropolis to where I was born and brought up. But fortunately, my father was a very good violin player. He didn't know anything about the trumpet. He sent off to Montgomery and Ward's and got an Arvin book, and he got some help out of that. But basically, he taught me to play the violin, which I did not want to play. He tried to get me to study violin. So he said, well, what do you want to play? And I wound up with the trumpet. And he taught me to play violin on the trumpet. I didn't know about lip slurs or ooh-ah-ee or any of that stuff. My father only talked in terms of how to bow a piece. And the first teacher that I had in New York City, Benny Baker, when he was with Toscanini and the NBC Symphony, he was a kind of a musician that when the fiddle players couldn't get something right, Toscanini, in his very broken accent, would have Benny Baker play it for him on the trumpet. He'd say, God damn it, that's how that goes. And that's because Benny didn't know anything all that much about trumpet. He never thought of the trumpet. He kind of didn't like trumpet. He didn't like the school of trumpet playing. He liked music. And that's what happened. This is such a mechanical instrument. It requires so much from you physically that it is so easy to get tied up in all this stuff I just talked about at much too long a time here. Because this gives the impression that it's mechanical. We do this. This you have to do. This is what you have to do. All that warm-up stuff. But now we're ready to make music, and this is where we begin to lose people in the world of trumpet playing. It's too much of a mechanical instrument. Try to learn as much as you can from violin players and singers, and try to play that way. I mean, I've actually heard guys say, well, I want a symphonic sound, no vibrato. I said, when the hell have you ever heard a symphony orchestra that was any good where the brass players kept playing without a vibrato all the time? It's stupid. And I mean, I've heard guys teaching in conservatories in the jazz band saying, oh man, don't play with that vibrato. I mean, play a straight tone, baby. That's the way it's supposed to be. Well, I'll tell you what. You just go listen to Count Basie and Duke Ellington, and you're going to hear vibrato used in an ensemble in the correct way. And the idea is to make music. When I used to do a lot of clinics, I would use one of these etudes out of, I guess, Charlier. This is the first place. After Benny Baker and I kind of got going, and he got me loosened up to where I could play anything at all, he whipped this one on me. It's the one that says it's about style. Depending on which book you have, it has different numbers. My old book was number 5, I think. Again, I want to apologize for any sounds I make. I'm not warmed up. The older you get, the longer it takes. About that time, he turned around and slapped me. And he said, what in the hell are you doing? He said, where's the music? He said, bow it. He said, first of all, you don't go. He said, it's not like that. It's a violin bow. You're laying it on the string. You set it down gently. You don't go boom, like that. He says, have the bow traveling when it hits the string. Otherwise, you're going to get a tearing sound. And he said, on that first phrase, your bow is going. See, when I get home Monday, I'm going to be practicing that because I still haven't got it. Can you hear that I'm going, I'm working the bow. That doesn't, those are the things that make music out of it. And they're the things that can slip out of your playing very quickly. But you go and stand in front of a good symphony orchestra any place, and you can pick out all the right things happening. You're a flute player doing it, a clarinet player, a trumpet player, people doing things the right way. And that's the thing you've got to remember on the trumpet. It's a very mechanical instrument, so we must overcome the mechanics of it and begin to make music at some point, which I unfortunately didn't do on that particular thing. But the idea is, do you know how hard it is just to get the attack right on that first note? You could work an entire day on laying that bow down correctly on the string. That's pretty close. Notice that I'm vibrating on the 8th notes. He used to yell at me about vibrating on 16th notes. He says, who the hell told you that it's all right to play a string of 16th notes without a vibrato? He said, you can't go like that, but you've got to be thinking vibrato, because if you don't, the notes are going to be flat. They're not going to have any light. They're not going to carry. There. It's very subtle, but those are the things that make music on a brass instrument. Overcome the brass. Get rid of that brass idea as quickly as you can. After you've warmed up for your hour or 2 hours, whatever it is. Okay, I've talked a bit about the basics of trumpet playing, and I hope I've made it clear to you. It's a kind of an instrument where you basically have to get in and do it for yourself. get a good teacher to show you the way. But like I say, you can find 10 great trumpet players and set them up and ask them to do the same thing, and they'll all 10 of them do it differently. There isn't any particularly right way to do any of these things. It's how it sounds in the long run. And that's why I don't care for the idea of clinics. But I agreed to do it, so I'm here. What I think a clinic is good for is if I would just walk out and forget everything I've done up to now and say, does anybody have any questions? And that would be because I could talk for 5 hours up here about playing the trumpet. I could talk longer than that, which is one of the big troubles with trumpet players. They talk too damn much and they'll get the Arvin book out. But I might never get to a point that you want to discuss. And so at this point I would say, if you have a question, do the usual thing, raise your hand, and let's see what we can find out about it. And a lot of people don't want to put up their hand. He did. But I learned not to put up my hand too soon when I was a kid back in eastern Oregon here. A town of 600 people. August is hot. The Gideons, who are, they're preachers. And they save souls. And they came to our little church. Well, it was all that was going on in town, that's for sure. And I'm sitting there with the preacher's son, Jimmy Byers, and we're sitting there, and these guys, each one of them would get up and kind of start nice, and then begin getting into ranting and raving about how terrible a life he'd lived, and bam, I saw Jesus, and I was saved. And then the next guy would get up and do it. And finally, the last guy had finished his whole deal. He says, now, is there anybody out there in this congregation that wants to be saved? And nobody was raising their hands because people in Arlington weren't much for being saved. They wanted to get out of there and get a beer. And however, being August and the window being open, a fly had come in and was buzzing around me and Jimmy Byers. Well, Jimmy had enough sense not to swat the fly. I went like that at that fly, and that guy caught me. That Gideon caught me. He said, look at that little boy. He's going to lead the way. Going to lead the way. And he got me up there, and they had me kneeling down, pouring water on me. And then they marched me down Main Street. We only had one street. My folks lived right on the Main Street, and he's marching me down Main Street, and I'm thinking, oh, God, what did I do now? And into my house, and my mother, he says, oh, your little son, he showed him the way. He's got faith. He's found Jesus with us here tonight. And my mother says, after they left, she says, now what have you done? I mean, she knew better. Anyway, that's not to make light of religion or any of that. Anyway, you did have a question. You'll have to speak louder. I'm 63 years old and the hearing is gone. Eddie Shaughnessy is a very loud drummer.
What is the value of pedal tones?
Oh, I think they're very good. I like pedal tones, which I didn't really, you saw that I played some. I like to get to those as early in the warm-up as possible. I'll break my routine and throw some of those in there, but I try to not shift my embouchure. Because if you just keep your embouchure in its position, and that's one of the things I like about that Jimmy Stamp book. You're going from high right down into those pedal tones and sometimes back up. And without an opportunity to do anything about it except just play it. And it kind of forces you into doing things right. And I'm a firm believer in pedal tones. You're only allowed one. Okay.
How do you manage between rest and play?
Well, that's a good. I'm sorry I didn't mention that sooner. And I think in a warm-up, it's very important not to warm up too long at a stretch. I'll play through one little series of things. Any one of the things, like this one here. It begins to sound better, doesn't it? But anyway, I play maybe 5 or 10 minutes, taking the mouthpiece off every now and then to kind of let it regenerate. I just pray for the phone to ring. I notice when the phone rings and I have to go talk for a minute and I come back, hey, well, that feels so much better. So I never could seem to understand in my warm-up why the importance of that unless somebody forces me into it. Somebody walks in to ask a question, the phone rings, and I go back to play and say, wow, that's better than actual playing. So that rest is very important. And I think in a practice session, when you get to the point where your lip is obviously fatigued, to continue on is pointless. It does not build strength. It builds bad habits. That take a little rest and then come back with your things restored a bit. Then you're playing with the right way and keep adding on a little bit here and there. Same way for going for high notes. Don't try to get up too high all at once. You'll work your way up. I never even got into that, by the way, which is, I think, is important too. Let me go back on the warm-up. Let's say after I've done these, the ones from the third warm-up series of stamps, this one here. To start going for high notes. And what I do is with expanding scales. These are Bill Adams from down at the University of Indiana. I think might have come from him, I'm not sure. But they started basically. See, I'm getting a bad habit there of huffing on my notes. Start down here. I'll do that one again. Any decent setting for playing all around music, whether it's classical or in a jazz band or whatever, it's not that very placid, sort of a nice warm-up feel that I had in the beginning or was looking for. That I want to get that first. But the kind of warm-up where the playing where you're set for this note. To me, that's a pretty basic way to start playing any phrase. With about the strength it takes to play up there. And by playing the high notes, you begin to cause your embouchure to fall into place, much as you do with a little youngster playing very loudly. And sometimes when my chops are very abused from the day before, or I'm having trouble warming up, there's a couple of little tricks I do. One, I start on middle G. The same embouchure that you play very loud with, you play very soft with. And by playing very loudly, it'll just sometimes, especially in that lower middle register, it'll force things into the right position if all else has failed. But I sure not going to ever walk in and do that thinking, well, that's a shortcut for warm-up. That comes after you've been playing a while. The other thing sometimes that I'll do, instead of putting my mouthpiece on and then setting my embouchure, I'll set an embouchure with the strength out here. Haven't that? We'll just set it up there. So that I've got that tension relaxation thing. I'll set it up in an opposite way, just as a relief. And sometimes it'll cause things to open up for me. Now,